So I want to explore this idea of non-self, but from a completely different angle. This isn't about proving you don't exist, not at all. It's about spotting this tiny, automatic little habit that, it turns out, shapes our entire reality.
I mean, it's the big one, isn't it? The most fundamental human question. We all have this feeling of being a someone, right? A self at the very center of our lives. And that feeling just forces us to ask, who exactly is this I? And boom, right away we get this really surprising answer. It's not there is no you. It's that the question itself is built on a faulty premise. It's kind of like asking, so what's north of the North Pole? The question itself just doesn't fit the reality of the situation. So what's the premise we're getting wrong?
Well, the core issue, it turns out, isn't some big belief we hold in our heads. It's actually a position we take. It's this felt stance right inside our own experience that happens so fast and so automatically, we don't even notice it's there.
So let's put a pin in this and define it. Standing. What are we talking about? It's the subtle, silent assumption that all of our experience needs a place, a spot from which it is known. It's the feeling of being located somewhere inside it all.
Okay, so what does this actually feel like in the real world? It's not a thought, remember. It's that subtle sense that experience is happening to me, that my awareness is located right here, kind of just behind my eyes. This very basic feeling of here-ness is the fundamental foothold on which the entire idea of me gets built.
And here's where it gets really fascinating. Our big, profound questions about who we are, they aren't the start of the inquiry. They're actually a symptom of this unnoticed habit of standing. The questions only make sense because we've already, without realizing it, assumed a position from which to ask them. Okay, so if this standing is the problem, how do we even begin to see it? Well, the key lies in this really crucial distinction. A lot of spiritual teachings get misread, it seems, simply because we're coming at them from the wrong angle.
You see, we almost always default to reading things temporally, based on time. We're looking for a sequence, a story. We're asking, okay, what happens next? We want to see progress. We want an outcome. But what if the teaching isn't a story at all? A structural reading sees it as an arrangement, like a blueprint. It doesn't ask what's next, but instead, how does this all hold together right now? What depends on what in this very moment?
Think about it like a photograph. To understand the photo itself, you don't really need the story of what happened a minute before or a minute after. You need to see the conditions that make it possible right now. The light, the lens, the film, the subject. A structural reading is just like that. It looks for the conditions present in this exact moment.
All right, let's take this new structural lens and apply it to one of Buddhism's most famously complex ideas, dependent origination. Now, it's often taught as this long, complicated timeline across lifetimes, but seeing it structurally, well, that changes everything.
This is the core formula. And just notice, it doesn't say, when this happens, then that happens. It says when this is, this is. It's not a sequence of separate events over time. It's describing a single field of experience where all these conditions and results are happening at the same time, holding each other up right now.
The crucial point here is that it's not a chain reaction like dominoes falling. It's more like the trusses holding up a roof. They all work together at once. So clinging provides the support for something called bhava, which is basically a readiness for an experience to be occupied by a self. And that readiness is what allows for jati, which is the instantaneous birth of a someone inside that experience. And of course, the moment that someone is born, it becomes vulnerable to loss.
So in this structural view, birth isn't a biological event. It's a psychological one. The moment you take offense at something, or you feel possessive or proud, a someone crystallizes into existence. That's the moment of birth, or jati, and it happens hundreds of times a day.
So, what on earth does this mean for practice? I mean, if the self isn't a real thing that needs to be fixed, but just a position that crystallizes when the conditions are right, then the whole goal of practice shifts. It's no longer about self-improvement.
So on one side, you have the typical improving model, right? It's a project, it's driven by this feeling that we're not good enough, and we're trying to move towards some ideal version of ourselves. But on the other side is this verifying model. This isn't driven by deficiency, it's driven by clarity. The goal is simply to notice what's already the case, to see the structure of experience as it is again and again.
As the source material puts it, practice becomes a way experience verifies its own structure again and again without needing to accumulate results. It's this continuous process of recognition, of just seeing how it works. It's not a race to a finish line.
So where does all of this lead?
It points toward a way of being in the world that feels fundamentally different, a way of living without constantly feeling like you need to find and secure a foothold for yourself.
And this is why it all matters, really. It's not just some clever philosophical idea. When you start to see this structure clearly, and you stop automatically taking a stand inside of it, you begin to live a life that just feels lighter, less burdened. Why? Because there's no longer a self at the center that needs constant protection and defense.
I just think this is such a powerful and reassuring way to frame the whole thing. The goal isn't self-annihilation. It's not about disappearing. The invitation is actually much gentler. Simply notice the habit. Notice where you have been standing.
And ultimately, this whole perspective suggests that clarity itself is the release. You don't have to attain some new, shiny quality. You simply see a burden so clearly that you realize you don't have to keep picking it up.
And that leaves us with a final question to just chew on. What if freedom, what if liberation, isn't about becoming a new, enlightened person? What if it's simply a correction of a very subtle, very fundamental misperception about where we are standing?